welcome back, guys. I hope you've had a good week. This is a part 2 of the video that we did last week where we modeled this Crescent floor lamp. In this video, we're going to be focused on basically creating shaders or a texture, or in other words, you can look at it as painting this thing. And then we're going to add in a ground plane to make a little scene. We're going to add in some lights, and then we're going to render it. So by the end of this video, we'll be finished with this project. You'll be able to have a lamp that you created, was able to make it look like however you wanted it to look like, add some lights, and then understand the basics of creating a scene and rendering. So if you guys are ready, let's get to it. I know that in the thumbnail of this video we show a purple lamp, but I think for purposes of demonstration what I want to do is to make this lamp here yellow, or some shade of yellow, so that it really stands out. You'll be able to see the texture applied to it really well with some gloss and that sort of thing. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. So there's a few things I want to go over to begin with. The view that we're looking at this in right now is kind of like the modeling viewport shading preview, and you can do a lot of things in here, such as click this chevron or this little drop down button up here at the top. You get a menu. From here you can change the different types of views of the material being applied only in this view. It doesn't make the object look like that. And that's useful for looking for blemishes in the topology and that sort of thing. You'll see a lot of other YouTubers do this, and I'll open the invitation again in this video, just like in the last one. If you guys want me to go through Blender's interface and describing how everything works and where everything is, and like really try to dumb that down into a simple video, let me know in the comments of this video and or the last video, and I'll start working on that for you. But in this video, what I really want to focus on is our texture, shading, lighting. So what I want us to do is go to something called Look Dev mode, or some people call it shader preview. Okay, if we come here and we get Look Dev mode up, you'll see that it's essentially Eevee. Eevee is one of the render engines in Blender, along with cycles. Most of the time when things that I produce and render in cycles, because it is the true ray tracing engine. So that basically means that light is calculated, the bounces of light are calculated, and it just looks more realistic. And it's seen from the perspective of the camera. Whereas you can think of Eevee more like a video game engine, more like an Unreal engine looking, which still looks great, but it's more it can be more stylized. It's not necessarily true ray tracing. I know this version of Blender there is ray tracing that can be enabled for Eevee. In my case, I do have it turned on because I am a glutton for punishment on my Mac here. And for most of the things I throw at this little Mac, it doesn't hurt it too bad. I'm on an M1 Max, 32 gigs of RAM, so pretty decent machine. But with that being said, if you look here, and I'm just going to kind of move around the viewport a little bit, you'll see this model we made. And like I said, notice I have my wireframe view turned on, so you can still see the topology. That's just a personal preference. If you are in Blender, that is the vanilla version, meaning that you haven't made any changes or you haven't added any add-ons to do any weird stuff, you likely won't see any of this. You'll just see the model that you created from the first video. And what we want to do is we want to come in here and we want to start adding some color to this. So unlike the last video, I'm going to kind of work backwards in that I want to start with the shade. So like when we modeled it, this let me look here, the shade right here, you see it's highlighted. I want to start with it and then move up the pole and move our way backwards with putting materials on here. So I'm going to click on this first, and what I want to do is I want to open up this button down here that looks like a little red globe. It says material. I want to click on it once, and we notice over here in the properties sidebar over here there's nothing, but we do have a button with a plus and it says new. I also want to bring to your attention we have 3 buttons over here as well. There's a plus, a minus, and then like another drop down button that has a chevron on it, and I will show you what those do in this video. Alright, so like we said, what I want to do is I want to use like a yellow paint scheme on here. I do want to do something different that wasn't originally in the scope of this video, but I think it's going to help you guys understand those little 3 buttons over there in the materials property that I just showed you, that it took me a long time to even discover. I didn't even know how to do it. I knew I needed to know how to do it, but I was having a very difficult time on YouTube trying to find a video that actually explained this to me. And I had been doing Blender for I think like a year and a half before I figured it out, and now I use it all the time. So you'll know what I'm talking about here in a second. One thing I want to do is I want to paint the outside of this yellow, but I want the inside of this to be white. And the reason why is because that is fairly accurate to a lot of lamps I see. This is also going to show you how to apply 2 different materials to the same object, which is an extremely common thing that people do. So I will hopefully provide a video to you all today to show you how to do that, because like I said, it took me a long time to find a video that just like right in your face showed you like, hey, this is what this does. So let's go ahead and do that now. So first thing I want to do, the way I want to solve this problem is like I said, I want this outside to be yellow. I'm not worrying about if it's glossy or anything else. I just want the color right now. That's the only thing that's on my mind. Just this shade, get it yellow on the outside, but then on the inside, make it white. I also want to make sure that this edge right here that we created from our model is yellow as well. You can even like make it a different color if you like. I mean, that's up to you, but for the sake of keeping this simple, we're just going to do the 2 colors. So how are we going to go about solving this problem? Well, first thing I notice here is I have geometry on the outside here. So you can see all these quads here that we made. I also noticed that there are quads on the edge, and then because we use a solidify modifier in our first video, there are also quads on the inside. So let's go ahead and do this. I want to go ahead and on the properties for materials, I want to create new. That's going to create a new shader, and I've got a lot of stuff turned on with my Eevee. I've basically got it like on maximum fidelity for Blender. So if mine's a little laggy, that's why. Yours by default likely won't be, because you won't have ray tracing and all that other good stuff turned on. So the first thing right here is we see it created a new entity here called material. First of all, I'm going to double left click in there, and I'm going to change the name. I'm going to call it shader dot, let's just call it yellow. I mean, you can call it whatever, but I'm going to call it yellow because I'm going to apply it to other parts of the model. I don't want to specify that it's just for the lampshade unless the lampshade explicitly needs to be different than everything else. I could make this into glass, but I don't want to, because we're gonna stick a fake bulb in there. I'm just gonna stick like an icosphere or a UV sphere in there to illuminate it and show you guys how to do that too in the video. So we got shader.yellow and base color. From here it's very easy. I could just click on it. We get a color wheel. I'm going to drag it over here where the yellows are. I'm going to bring down my brightness. And I'm going to let's bring it down a little bit. I'm going to move the hues back over to the right because this thing moves like in a clockwise fashion. And I'm going to make it like a nice canary yellow or a nice goldenrod color. Something about like that. A little bit more red in it. And you can also click on here and I can go to hex. We can pull the hexadecimal value up like you see when you're using Photoshop or Illustrator, or you're creating a website and you put like the little hex codes in there, those universal codes. So Blender will also give you that so we can copy that over, but I'm going to show you an easier way of doing it instead of worrying about the hex value and all of that. Because you can see I work in hue saturation and lightness, or hue saturation brightness values typically when I do this. Now notice I applied this to everything, but also the edges, which are good. We wanted that yellow, but the inside is yellow as well, so we don't want that. We want the inside to be white. So how do I do that? Here's how this works. It's very, very simple, but there's something you have to do first. There's two ways you can do it. I typically do the extra step because if I screw up, I can go back very quickly and fix it. So here's the two methods of doing this. Method number one, you basically hit the plus. That is now adding another shader. I'll hit new, and I'm going to rename this one shader. I will call this shade inside. This is just my naming convention, guys. You don't have to use it. Feel free not to use it. It just works for me because I have created a lot of stuff that had like a lot of moving parts in it, and I've gotten pretty confused in terms of where things are. So I'm using kind of the same, in my mind, I'm using the same mental methodology as I do when I used to write software, when you do what they call method chaining for like function names and stuff. It's just, you know, it's just my little weird way of doing it. So name it whatever, just keep it easy, you know, for you. So either the two methods is you create the first one that applies to the whole object that you have selected. So in other words, the reason why everything turned yellow because we only had one shader. So we had the whole object selected. I created the one shader, applied it, and it made the whole thing the yellow. But now that I'm wanting to tackle the inside to be white, I hit that plus, I create a new shader. If you notice, I went in here and did some tweaking and some changes, which we will clean this up later. I'm just trying to solve my first problem of getting inside white versus outside yellow. You can come in here and go to face edit mode, and you can start selecting everything in here. So I'm going to show you a pretty easy way of doing this. So I'm going to get right on here in this edge, and I'm going to hold down Control Shift, click that edge. Actually, let me turn give me 1 second, let me turn subdivision off so you can see the geometry a little bit better. I'm gonna keep Control Shift held down. I'm gonna click that edge, and really all I'm trying to do is select that bottom edge all the way around. So do I have everybody? Yeah. And now I'm gonna hold down Control and plus on the numpad. See, and it selects everything going all the way up. Oop, but it's selecting the outside too. That's not what I want. Give me a second. Actually, I got a better idea. Hit the C key on the keyboard. Use your scroll wheel. You can scroll it up to make it a little bit bigger, and that'll just select everything in there. This is quick. This is quicker and more accurate than what I told you originally. So just hit the C key. And just hold down the left mouse button and just click in there. Hit the escape key. That gives you control to move this thing around again. And then hit the C key again. C is in Charlie. And just paint in there and select all those faces. It just makes sure, hit escape again, move it around, hit C again. Just make sure you get all of these faces in here selected only on the inside. Try to stay away from the edge. If for some reason you screw up, if you've got a 3-button mouse, hit the middle mouse button once, and that works as an unselect. See, notice where my circle is, or my cursor, where I'm selecting, I'm just making sure the edge hits the faces, because if it goes outside of that, you're going to select part of that rim. I'm just looking in there and make sure I got everything selected. If you can't really tell because the color is yellow, then go back to this mode here that we modeled from, and see right here I missed a couple. Boom, boom. So I want to make sure everybody's selected. It looks good. So either I can do it like this just to select everything. Let's go back to look dev mode and back to materials, and then I can go down here and click it once and then hit assign. Boom, notice now everything is white. So that's one way of doing it. I'm gonna hit Command Z and back out of this a couple times. But think of it like this. I had to do all that work to select all this stuff, right? What if I screwed up and accidentally clicked off of it? Now I got to go back in there and select it again, which is going to just waste time. And if you're doing paid work, you don't want to be wasting time because time is money. So the way I usually do this, and it's an extra step, but it saves me a lot of headache later, is I'll go here to the data icon, And then I go up to something here called vertex groups. I'll hit the plus. I'm gonna rename this shade.inside. Hit enter, and then I'm gonna hit assign. That way what happens is if I go outside the lamp, say, oh no, I screwed up. The first method that I showed you, I would have had to come back in here and select all this stuff again. But by creating a vertex group saves the selection. It'll save a selection of vertices, or it'll save a selection of edges, or it'll save a selection of faces. So this is what we did. This is kind of like creating a backup of my selection. You can look at it like that, right? So if I screwed up, said, oh no, I clicked away from it, instead of me going back in there and wasting another 2 or 3 minutes selecting that stuff again, I just hit, because I've made this, I hit select, boom, and it comes back. And I know it's right because it's the vertex group that I had created. Now I can come back to materials and do the same thing again, just hit assign. And then I go back to object mode, like so, and now we have solved the first problem. The first problem was getting the outside to be yellow and the edges, and then getting the inside to be white. Okay, so now I'm going to come back in here and turn my subdivision surface modifier on to get the smoothness back, and then I am going to save my file. So far so good. We've got the shade pretty much done. Another thing I want to do, since we're in here, before we move on to this little piece up here, is I want to select the shade, go back to materials, and I want to start looking at some of the properties here. So if you notice up here, let's go back and click on one time shader.yellow. Most of these lamps are at least made out of aluminum or some aluminum composite. So I want to turn on some of the metal. So I'm going to click in here and drag it to the right. I don't need to go all the way to 1. 1 basically means like 100% because these are percentages. So 0.813 is the same as 81.3%. You can look at it like that. Of metallicness to this shader, right? And then the roughness defines how much it is glossy looking or smooth looking. So I can turn that down to, I'm just kind of eyeballing it because I kind of know how I want this styled. So we'll turn that down to 0.346 or 34.6%. And I want the inside to be a little bit more matte, because if you look at a real lamp, that's typically how that is. So all you have to do is you don't have to select this anymore because this second shader here has already been applied to it. I'll just come down here and I'll crank the metallic up just a hair to about 25%. So let's just do 0.25. So it's exactly 25%, and I want to take the roughness down just a little bit, but not too much because I want it more matte looking. Let's do 0.70 or 70% roughness, which means it's primarily going to be rough. And once I look at it in cycles, I may adjust it, but for now it's okay. Okay, so if you have something, something that just came to my attention. If you have something that looks like this, see how the yellow is coming up inside the lamp and not really on that edge? That is because of the subdivision surface modifier that we applied to it. So the way you will fix that, let's just stay in this mode. Let's do a little tweaking here. Let's go to edge select mode, right? What I want to do is I want to click on this edge right here at the bottom, because what I want to do is I want to tighten it up. There's two ways of handling this. Either I can create another edge loop and bring it down here close to here, or I can select this one edge and then I can hold down Shift and E and basically increase the creasing of that edge, which if I hit the end panel, you'll see it right here. See mean crease to 1. That's what that is. So watch it. If I go back to 0, watch it retract back to where it was. But if I scroll it back to 1, it fixes that problem. And really, what I showed you was basically like a keyboard shortcut for that. So let me look in here real quick, guys. Let me see if I can bring it back some more by creasing out. Nah, let's not mess with that one. I think let's do this one here, because it's still not quite where I want it. You can't see it what I've got selected. If I hide the sub D modifier, you'll see it. Actually, let's back up here. Let's turn this guy back to 0. I selected the wrong loop. Let's select this loop. This is part of my bevel loop, and let's see if this fixes it here. So I select that loop there, I hold down Alt and click, and then select the whole thing. I'm going to change this one to 1. Did that do it? No, that didn't do it. Alright, so let me do something else. Select that first loop we selected, hit Control X. I probably realized this was a bad idea. Yeah, it's a bad idea. Ah, you know what? Never mind. I'll tell you what I did wrong. Let's do this. Let's go back to face mode. See this loop right here? Let's just select this loop and apply the material to it. So what I want to do is select all of this. Zoom in so I can see what I'm doing here. You guys can follow along. So what I'm doing is I'm going around this edge loop. I just didn't have the right loop selected. One thing I want to do in these videos is when I screw up, I want to show it to you, because these are common things that as you're learning Blender you'll do all the time. Okay? I can go back in there and adjust my vertex mode, so I could come out of here and hit select and then add these and then hit assign again. But for the sake of this video, I'm not going to do that. So now that I've got this edge loop here selected, what I want to do is I want to go down here one time, select the inside shade, and then hit assign. Watch what happens. Okay, so see, that turns that on. And let's go back and let's turn on the subdivision so we can see it. And see, now that fixes the problem. Okay, so now this is, save your file, this is done. So see, now I've got that edge just how I wanted it. Okay, now that we're done with the shade piece down here, what I want to do now is I want to tackle the pole and this little piece here that in the first video we call shade 1. These are part of the same mesh or the same object, as you can see over here. And what I want though is I want this little piece right here to be a different color, maybe a different shade of this goldenrod color, but I want the pole here to be the same color as this and the same material as this, but I want this piece to be different. So how do we solve that problem? We're going to use some of the same techniques that we used before to do the same thing here. Okay, yeah, that's what we're going to do. So I'm going to show you the easy way of doing this. Right, work smart, not hard. Best way you can. So since this is all one piece, and we can optionally change the base later or make it the same. Right now I don't really care. Right now the thing I'm trying to solve for is the pole and this little piece here. So one way I'll handle it is I'll go down here to material, and because I want it to be the same material, and if I make a change to it here, I want it to reflect everywhere else I've applied it. So I will select this little drop down button with the little material icon here to the left of the new button, but not click on the new button by itself. And you notice those are the two previous shaders that we had selected for the shade part. So I'm going to click on shader.yellow, and if you notice, immediately the pole and this little piece are exactly the same material as the outside of our shader here, because we're sharing the same shader across it. And if I make a change to the shader, say after selecting the pole object or going back and selecting the outside of the shade object, and I make a change to the roughness or whatever, it'll propagate everywhere else, and that's what we want. Let me hide the end panel real quick. That is exactly what we want. But what we're trying to do now is we got half of our problem solved, and that was how to get the pole the same look and feel as the shade here. So now let's tackle solving the problem of the second part, which is making this little piece here slightly different. And what you're going to see is the way that we solve this problem is very similar to how we solved making the outside of the shade yellow and the inside of it white. We're going to do something very similar. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to want to create a vertex group of just the outside of this piece right here. And because these are still two separate objects, so in other words, the pole and the shade are two separate objects, like I showed you in the first video, you can select the pole, you can hit the / key on the numpad that isolates that object, which is just the pole, and this makes it a little bit easier for me to select what I need to select here. And I'll show you another little trick too. So I'm using my scroll wheel on my mouse, and sometimes it just zooms in too much. If you hold down the control key on the keyboard, you hold down the middle mouse button and you move the mouse up and down, it just smooths out the zoom like so. Alright guys, one thing that I noticed when I was clicking through this stuff here a second ago is I never had the screencast keys turned on for you, so oops, my bad. Hopefully in the first part it was pretty easy stuff for you. You kind of know how you guys should know how to grab things and move things and rotate things and zoom in and that sort of thing. So hopefully you didn't need it, but moving forward we do have screencast turned on, so my apologies if you missed things I was clicking on to follow around, but hopefully I did a pretty decent job of explaining it. Alright, so now that we've got the pole partially done, so one of two problems are solved for, I'm going to hit the / on the numpad, and remember from the first video I was stating that this is how you isolate an object, and because the shade and the pole were two separate objects, we just got them kind of stuck together. This allows us to do that. So what I want to do is I want to zoom in here, hit my controls to smooth it down, and what I'm going to do, the way I'm going to solve this problem is I'm going to create a vertex group of just this piece right here. And like I said, I like to use vertex groups because if I screw up, I can always go back in there and adjust that vertex group, or I can go back in there and select it very quickly and make changes to things without having to select it all over again, wasting a bunch of time. So I'm going to call this shade 1, and let's go to face selection mode. Really guys, all I'm after is just this little piece here. And I know some of the topology here is ugly. That's fine, I can live with it. You're not seeing it anyway. I would not have done it this way for a real paid account. However, I'm really trying to keep these videos as simple as I can. Hopefully I'll get better at it the more of these videos I do. It's much quicker for me just to just sit here and do it than to explain it, but you know, I'm trying to help you all learn. I'm trying to also deal with things that I didn't know how to do. Let's see here. Right now I'm just going up and down each of these and hitting control. Some people may say, well, why aren't you just hitting control plus? So I could have done that. I'm just trying to right now just to kind of show you guys how much of a pain this is. I have to select this every time to try to enforce to you the importance of creating a vertex group. Just do this once, and then that way you don't have to do it anymore. At least not for this particular piece here. And the vertex groups are assigned to a particular object or mesh. So you can have as many vertex groups as you want. I wouldn't overdo it, but Um, it's a nice feature of the software. Saves you a lot of time. I'll tell you another place where you see vertex groups used a lot is in rigging for animation. So like rigging of legs and stuff like that. All right, almost done. All right, so this is good enough. Remember, when we modeled this, we pretty much kept it flat, so it's going to select the inside and outside because there's not any depth to this. We didn't use a solidify modifier on it, only because it adds geometry, number one, and number two, you're not going to see it anyway. So right now, because it's all selected, all I have to do up under vertex groups is hit assign, and it just assigned those selected faces there to that particular shade 1 vertex group. Okay, so now I want to go back to my materials and I want to create a new material. I'm going to hit new and I'm going to call this shader.shade1 Y, only because that's what we call the object. And I'm going to hit assign, and if you notice right here, I missed a piece. So alright, what we got going on here is the sub D modifier is causing this to happen. What's happening is the shader.yellow here that was originally applied to this entire model or object is bleeding through here, and I believe it's got something to do with the fact we probably need an edge loop here. So let me put in another edge loop here. See, that helped it. That helped it quite a bit. I don't know if I'm gonna be able to get rid of all of it. These are just typical problems that happen when you're modeling things in Blender and you're not the absolute best at it yet. I don't want to just leave it like this, but for now, just so we don't waste too much time here, let's leave it like this for now. That helped it, but I want to make sure that it doesn't screw with the topology and the shape of this thing. I don't want it to make it really sharp looking here. And like I said, it may even be hidden, but even still, you want to try to fix stuff like this. So I'm gonna save my file. For now, I'm gonna leave it. And if I can figure out like what was going on, I will definitely append that to the video so you guys will know. I'm gonna hit / and come back out. So now the second part of our problem has been resolved, which was to get this piece a different color or different material than the pole. So let's go back in the material view and let's make sure we select the right thing before we change something. And what I want to do is I want to take the values of this, and this is you're gonna be like, why did you change it only to make it that way again? You're gonna see why, because I'm gonna make a variation of it. I want to select the shader.yellow. I want to click the drop down button here with the chevron on it for material specials. Click it and I want to hit copy material. Okay, and at the bottom down here you'll see it says, let's see if I can, usually down here like below the timeline you'll see it says material copy. It gives you a status. Then I want to go here to shader.shade1 that we created, and I want to click on that same button again. I want to hit paste material. So now it brings us right back to where we were, but there's a difference. If I make a change to this one, it does not affect the change to the previous one, because I basically created a copy visually of that same shader, but I created a separate variation or a separate instance of it. It's not the same instance that's inherent in global values. This was basically like a duplicate of it. I created a twin that can have its own attributes, in other words. So what I want to do, the reason why I wanted to do that is I wanted to come here and just like basically change the color. So I'm going to take lightness value and I'm going to crank it down. Because remember I said I wanted it to look like a variation of the first one, but just a little different. And I'll tell you another thing. I mean, maybe I'll add a little bit more red to this. See what that looks like. Yeah, something, I don't want to look like McDonald's colors or nothing, but let's keep it kind of subtle. See? And then do something like that. And let's save our file. This now solves the second issue that we had. Man, my screencast keys look massive today. I'll screw with that too in the next video, because that's like bothering me. It's bothering me to see it like that. So, okay, so we got two things taken care of. The lamp shade is done. The pole is done. And now the last thing left is the base. Alright guys, on to the final part of this right here. I'm going to keep this real simple, just to kind of keep this video from being as long as the last one. I'm going to select on the base, and I'm going to create a new material. I'm going to hit the little chevron button here. I'm going to hit paste material. Boom, done. Save our file. So now we've got the lamp textured, all with what we call procedural textures, which means it's just applying color. We're not applying any images. I'm not going to do that in this video. I'd like to give you a better model to do that with, even though we could have done it with this one, but just trying to keep it simple. So one thing I want to do here is I want to do a little bit more modeling while we're in here, but it's going to be simple stuff. I want to create a ground plane, so I'm going to hit Shift A in Mesh, Plane. I'm going to go to Edit Vertex mode because I don't want to have to change the scale later. I'm going to zoom out a little bit. I'm going to hit S for scale, scale it way up. I don't need it too big because when we render it, I don't want it massive, but I want it big enough so light can bounce in here and then it can get some soft light. I'm going to go to Edge Select mode. I'm going to select these two edges, and I'm going to hold down Shift, select this edge, and I'm going to hit the E, Z to extrude upon the Z axis. I don't want this wall too high because it may obscure from the light I'm trying to bring in. I'm going to hold down the left button and I'm going to drag across to select this piece here. I'm going to hold Shift, drag across, select this piece here, and then I want to bevel this like so. Hit my scroll wheel. Something about like that, nice and fat like that. Come back out. I want to select an object, hit Shade Smooth. So now we got a backdrop. And from here we can put in a camera, which we don't have a camera yet. So I'm going to hit Shift A. I'm going to hit Camera. And on the numpad, since I'm looking at it in this view, I'm going to hit, on the keyboard, I'm going to hit Command Alt and 0. Boom, that gives us a camera. I'm going to go up under here under these output properties, and I'm going to change this to 1920 by 1920 square. Like so. I'm going to go here, I'm going to select the camera, and I'm going to hit G and move it around. I want to change the focal plane on it, so I'm going to go into camera icon, focal length I should say, and then I want to change this to 80, because this is more like photography. Really portrait photography to be more exact, but just get it in there. If you really want to be nitpicky about it, which, you know, I'm with that, hit viewport display under the camera view, go to composition guys, and go to center and thirds. This is like adheres to the rule of thirds, and you can move the camera around and use those little guides there to kind of help you. If the rest of the background is bugging you because you can't see past it, then where it says pass part out, change that all the way to 1. Or, you know, if you still want to kind of see it but you want it to be muted, seriously muted, then maybe change like 97%, and that'll do that too. Now, to keep everything kind of neat here, one thing I may want to do is add the camera, drag it up to Scene Collection, or you can put it in its own collection, especially if you have multiple cameras. In this case, I'm going to do that. I want to create a new collection. Just call it Cams. Hit Create. I'll give it a color so it stands out. Where's my color? Go up here. There we go. Green. And for now I can just hide it because I'm not likely going to change the camera. Plane, let's call it backdrop. Okay. And save my file. And one thing I want to do now is I want to go up under the render options. I want to change it from Eevee to cycles. And I won't go into too much detail about settings for now. There are plenty of other people who are better experts on this than I am that have YouTube videos about that particular topic. So I will ask that you defer to them for that. But if you want me to go over anything around cycles in the future, let me know and then I'll create a video about that. I do want to go back to orthographic mode because I'm looking at this shadow and it looks like my lamp is hovering slightly above the surface of that plane. And let's see if it is. I'm going to change my view here. Yeah, it is. So what's quicker is to move the backdrop up. Like that. Okay, and then I'm gonna hit 0 on the numpad to go back to the camera view. I'm gonna go back to, actually, you know what? Let's save the file. Let's go to render view because this actually runs cycles. Like I said, I'm just giving this to you in real time. My Mac is not the fastest in the world, even though it should be because it's a M1 Max. It's got a lot of RAM on it, but as you can see, it takes some time for things to render sometimes on it. Alright, oh goodness, what's going on? Why does it look like this? Well, pretty simple answer. Number one, there's no light in the world. And if we go into the world settings are set to 1 with a gray color. Now watch what happens when I crank this color, change it. Go up to white, now I can see some stuff. But you know, that doesn't look realistic. And we're in cycles, so it should look more realistic. There's two ways you can light it. If you want to create it like it's shot in the studio, you can either use something called an HDRI, which is a high dynamic range image. They're free. Polyhaven has a bunch of them. There's a lot of websites that have a bunch of them. Or you can make your own if you have one of those 360 degree cameras. And basically what you do is you create an emission shader with it, and so it gives off light. And you can take I mean, you really don't need a 360, but 360s work better because it just kind of wraps in a sphere around the scene, so you get like accurate light. It deals with proper like lens distortion and that sort of thing too, but I mean, there are ways around it. You could either, like if you didn't have a 360 camera and didn't want to spend the money on one, you literally could take your iPhone or your Android phone, do a panorama image, like a really long one, and then go into software in like a Photoshop or Affinity Photo and screw with the lens distortion because there's filters for it, and get it to wrap around the scene and essentially do the same thing for the most part. Just make sure you shoot it real big, like real high resolution, and you could get it to wrap at the top. I mean, there's and I think actually Photoshop has a feature that does that, creates 360s out of panorama images. So that's kind of like the poor man's way of doing it, but I mean, unless you're using the HDRI in a scene, you're just using it as a light source, it totally works. So, but I'm not gonna show you how to make it. I just wanted to explain it. One thing I do want to do for this scene is I want to start adding in lights because I want to highlight this as like a product. So I'm gonna go back on the shade. You know what? I was gonna show you the way I usually do it, but let me show you the vanilla way of doing this. So I'm going to go to Shift A, I'm going to go to Light, I'm going to go to Area Light, and notice down here, because you see this little yellow dot, that's my light. So if I'm going to hit G and Z, I'm going to bring it up above the backdrop we made there. And you'll see I'm going to work kind of fast here. I'm going to change some views of some things. Let me get out of here. Let me go back to the mode here we use for modeling. Okay, so there's the shade, there's the base. I want the lamp to be roughly over the shade, and I'm gonna make it bigger, so I'm gonna scale it up. You can kind of see what I'm doing here. I'm gonna go G and Z on the lamp because I want it up above the lamp. And let's see. And what I want to do is go into light settings. It's only a 10-watt lamp, so let's go back to render view. But I want it to be 100 watt. See what that looks like. Yeah, that's nice. I'm going to offset this lamp because the camera is back towards the right of this screen. So I want the light to be more towards the camera, like so, because I want really one side of this to be lit more than the other. And then I'm going to slightly rotate this on the x-axis back towards the object, so we can get some backlighting on the backdrop up there, right? Then I'm going to go Shift D on Y, because I'm going to ramp it up, and then I'm going to put some light back here to lighten that. And I'm going to go to Shift D and X over here to just add some ambient lighting in the scene here. Just bear with me, guys. You'll see I'm just kind of moving. So I'm kind of moving this light around. I'm not really doing 3-point lighting. I'm just kind of arbitrarily making some lighting here. So where are my lights? I imagine they're in the cam. So let's select all of these lights here, and I'm gonna hit M, and I'll create a new collection. Lighting. Boom. So they're in their own collection now. I'm gonna change this to the yellow. So area light, let's take this guy here, area 2, which is, go back, give me a second. Okay, so that's the one that's shining on that backdrop over there. Let's take that guy, let's look at it back in render. He's fine. I would say this one here. In the camera view, let's crank it down. I think I made it 100. They're all 100 right now because I basically duplicated them all. Yeah, I don't want too much pop on it, but I want a nice feel here. Area 2 is... when it turns black, I'm getting stuck in that wall. Is what's happening. Here we go. That one's okay. I would say this one here. That one is area 3. Let's go back to camera view because I want to see how it interacts with it. Let's crank this up to like 500. Yep, it's too much. Let me crank him down to 75 watts. Yeah, that's pretty good. Because I want like a nice soft lighting here. And this is not the best lighting, and this is not my best lighting work. I'm just trying to, like I said, just trying to basically show you guys how to do this. Another thing I want to do is I want to create, I want to take an icosphere or something. Go back here. Take an icosphere and I want to shove it up there in that, lampshade. A second here. I'm going to put it up in here. So the best way of doing that is go to tab. Let's select this edge like I showed you in the first video. And I want to do cursor to select it. Go back in object mode. I'm going to hit Shift A, mesh. Let's do a UV sphere. It's going to be massive. Size them down. Size them down, size them down, size them down. Apply the scale. And what I want to do is I want to go up in there, pretend it's a light bulb. It doesn't need to be hooked to anything. It can literally float in there. Okay, so just go up just a little bit more. Like so. Actually, let's come down a little bit. About like that. Okay. Go back to camera view. Let's go to render view. And let's call this model.bulb. Let's hit M. I want to move it to the model collection. But it's not part of the lamp per se. And then I want to go down here to the materials. I want to create new. And I'm going to show you a different view of this. So I'm going to call it shader.bulb. literally all I'm going to do is put light on it. So hit save on the file. So there's another way of doing this. So if you look at the top, you see like all of these little tabs up here. These are predefined views that the Blender Foundation created, or Blender, the company, created for you to use. So, you know, most of the palettes and applicable tools that you need to do a particular function are kind of there. You know, most of the time you still end up changing things, but I'm just going to keep it. I'm going to keep it like they have it. So I'm going to the shading tab here. And what we're looking at is go to camera view. We're looking at our selected bulb here, and the same stuff that's over here in this panel that we've been using under material view, this is using the node setup. We're looking at it here as well. So one thing I want to do is, because I don't need to put metallic, roughness, and all this other stuff to it, I'm going to delete the principal BSD. Now let's turn render on so you can see this actually happen. So I'm going to hit X, delete it, and then I'm going to come here and do a search emission. Do an emission shader. And I really don't need a diffuse. I'm gonna click this little green to green here, because green to green works. And let's see, strength, let's do 25. And let's take a look up in there, because you're going to see some light coming from this thing. If I can make a proper selection, you will. Alright, give me a sec, guys. Sometimes it's just too fast. I'm overshooting my landing here. What a pain. And I know why it's doing this. It's a setting I have set up on here where I've got camera where it rotates around an object. I mainly use that for modeling. Let me hide this backdrop. Give me a second. Oh yeah, that makes it better. Backdrop screwing with me. There we go. Only took me 20 minutes to do that. Let's see. Okay, so see now that it's lit in there. So let's go back to here. Turn the backdrop back on in the viewport. And what I want to do with the backdrop, because I don't think we ever added a material to it, let's just create a material. Don't even worry about naming it, because I want to make it a little darker. And the reason why I'm doing that is just to kind of make a point here. And let's go back to my bulb. Select it, and let's turn this on to 75. You shouldn't need to crank it up to 500, but now you can see something's hitting the ground. See, now you can see the actual light coming from the bulb, and actually if I bring it down a little bit, you'll see it more. Something about like that. Like I said, this is not perfect, but I'm not trying to be perfect. I'm literally just trying to model it and show you how to apply these shaders to an object, just so this kind of gets you started. And I hope this video was a fairly good explanation of how to do this. If you like this video, if it's helpful, if you want to see more stuff, please like and subscribe in the channel. Please also leave me positive comments or constructive comments on things where you think I can be more helpful to you in explaining things. Videos will go quicker. Hopefully, I'm still trying to get my groove and trying to get my format down. So this is video number 2, but this is kind of new to me in terms of explaining it. But I'm mainly just usually got music going and just sit here doing it. So going into Blender and explaining Blender is something new to me as well. So we learn together, we'll get there together, and I thank you for your support and for watching my video. Take care.